As you watch the deep meaning images in this video, I'll walk you through deep motivational words up to the last minutes. Have you ever noticed how hours slip away while we are waiting, worrying, or hoping? It is as if the moments fold themselves into one another while we are busy chasing what feels urgent. Sometimes we graze at the clock and the numbers have moved faster than our thoughts. We think we have paused, but time doesn't wait. It keeps carving paths through the landscape of our lives, indifferent to what we want or what we fear. We have all felt it, the silent pressure of the day pressing on our shoulders, the soft instance of moments passing unnoticed. We sit with a cup of coffee, staring at wall, and realize that an hour or two has vanished without leaving a trace. We try to hold on to it, but time slips like water through cupped hands. It doesn't argue, it doesn't negotiate, it simply throws on, leaving behind a map of shadows and traces. And sometimes, if we are honest, we wonder what it is all about. And all for we plan, we schedule, we anticipate, and yet clock keeps ticking, as if laughing softly at our illusion of control. The seconds mark themselves in silence while we chase some distant tomorrow, thinking that if we hurry, we might finally arrive somewhere meaningful. But maybe the arrival is always just an illusion, a whisper in the moment of hours. You have seen it in the way seasons fall into each other, in slow growth of plant we forget to water, in the fading echo of a conversation long past. Time carves those paths silently, gently, often unnoticed until we stumble into its traces. It is impartial, neither cruel nor kind, moving forward whether we are ready or not. And so we begin here, together, noticing the rhythm of our own days, the silent footstep of movement passing. We don't need to fix it yet. We don't need to chase it or escape it. We simply look, we observe the threads of time wavering through our lives, the path and the pattern forming under our feet, the faint shadows that mark the hours we have already lived. You notice yourself pausing mid-thought, wondering if this moment matters at all. The hum of the day's presses softly against your mind, a constant background vibration you have learned to ignore. You scroll, glance, check, repeat, and in those small fragment pieces of time, you feel a silent emptiness. It's not loud or dramatic. It is subtle, almost invisible. But it is there. You catch yourself thinking about something you said yesterday, a conversation that triggered longer than it should have, and the ripple of the memory stretches across your chest. You wish it would fade, but time keeps the echo alive. You sit, maybe with a notebook, maybe with nothing at all, and notice the shadows of the past brushing against the present. Some are comforting, familiar, the smell of rain on asphalt, hum of the old song, but others prick at your attention. Regrets, missed opportunities, the awkward pauses that reply over and over. You feel that tug between holding on and letting go, between waiting to fix the past and understand that it cannot be altered. And yet, here, right now, this present is where life truly happens. The silent realization strikes like a soft bell. Even in your worries, even in small lost hours, something is moving beneath the surface. A pulse, a rhythm, a continuity you cannot control. You notice the rise and fall of your chest, the slow tick of a sound secondhand, the subtle shift in light across your walls. The passage of time is a core of mindfulness, not because it judges you, but because it asks nothing of you except attention. You try to control it, of course. You schedule, you plan, you break the day into pieces you can manage. You want to shape it, to bend it to your will. But time is patient and unyielding. You watch it slip through your fingers, and no matter how tightly you try to hold it, there's frustration here. Yes, a tension between what you can influence and what moves independently of you. And in this tension, you begin to notice something else. The subtle adversary of your life. Every choice, every gesture, every small act is a brushstroke on the canvas of those hours. The thread of time weaves those brushstrokes into patterns you may not fully understand yet, but they are yours nonetheless. You remember yesterday, the way you hesitated before saying something meaningful, or how you lingered too long to a trivial word that dissolved into silence. You remember how you lost yourself in the small moment, how hours bled into each other, and how strange it felt to be both observer and participant in the same unfolding day. You notice the silent movement of your mind, the loops, the spirals, the fragment of thoughts that form the invisible architecture of your inner life. You can see now how the present is both fragile and abundant. Each breath carries weight, each grace contains depth, each second holds a potential that will never come again. Time is a thread, and you are moving along it, leaving subtle marks, tiny imprints that only you can perceive. Even when the day feels wasted, even when the small regret gather like dust, something is happening beneath the surface. The river of minutes flows, carrying you forward, whether you recognize it or not. And so, in this moment, you simply notice. You notice the pulse, the rhythm, the silent instant of life moving. You notice how small acts accumulate into a texture of days, weeks, or years. You notice the tension between waiting to hold it all and to gather the impossibility of doing so. And in noticing, there is a small clarity, a soft awareness. You are here. You are experiencing this, imperfect and incomplete, yet unmistakably alive. The present is a doorway. It does not shout, it does not demand. It waits for you to learn and lean in, to observe the patterns, to see the faint thread connecting what was and what is, and what will unfold. And in that noticing, you begin to see the silent artistry of your existence, woven deliberately into the unyielding rhythm of time. We've all tried to control the hours, haven't we? We make plans, set intentions, sketch schedules in neat rows, and still the days spill over in ways we can't predict. We have sat with journals open, pens poised, ready to capture insight, only to find the page blank staring back at us. The experiment of self-discipline often ends in frustration. A missed meeting, a forgotten promise, a thought that refuses to bend. And in those failures, we silently scold ourselves, wondering why we couldn't hold on to what we imagined we could. We have noticed, too, how endings arrive unexpectedly. A chapter closes, a conversation fades, a project dissolves, and for a moment, we are left in a strange emptiness. We feel the pull of loss, the tug of unfinished business, and the weight of impermanence pressing in. Yet, if we pause, we realize something gentle is happening beneath the surface. Every ending is a start of something new in time. The silence after a loss, the pause between one day and the next, the subtle shift in perspective. Those are beginnings we often overlook. We are running slowly. That life's transitions are not punishment, but invitations. We have experimented with small intentional acts, the silent test of noticing life rather than trying to command it. We have tried sitting by a window, counting the slow dance of shadow across the floor. We have watched the rhythm of our own breathing, timing ourselves not with clock, but with the rise and fall of our chest. Some days, it feels almost abundant, absurd. This effort to synchronize with time, as if a few deliberate minutes could restore the hours we fell sleeping. And yet, in those small attempts, we discover clarity. Time's flow teaches acceptance and resilience. Not because it bends to our will, but because we bend to its rhythm. We have failed at mindfulness more often than we have succeeded. We start a morning ritual, determined to be silent, only to be pulled away by noise, distraction, thought, and each failure, though frustrating, brings a subtle lesson. The essence is not perfection, but attention. The practice of noticing, of being present for even the small moments, is what matters. We are learning to let go with grace, to release the desire for control, and to observe the fleeting nature of life without judgment. We have written in journals about regrets, small mistakes, and moments of shame, only to close the notebook and feel the old anxieties creeping back. Yet, the act of recording, of observing our own patterns, create a distance that softens their grip. In those pages, we see repetitions, the same worries, the same desires, the same small attempts of mastery. And as we read back, we notice that impermanence is not a threat but a guide. Embrace impermanence as the essence of life. The sentences we have written, the failed intention, the forgotten hours, they all move forward with time, leaving space for growth, for understanding, for silent renewal. We notice how much of life is spent between intention and outcome, between planning and the unexpected. There's a tension here, a gentle friction that shapes who we are. We stumble, we fail, we attempt again. Some days we are patient, some days we rage at the unfairness of it all, and gradually Through repeated attempts, we begin to see a pattern. The experiments themselves matter more than the results. They teach us to inhibit time fully, to notice its rhythm, to align our inner pace with external parity. We reflect on the small victories too. Even if fleeting, a moment when we truly notice the light on the wall, when our worry passes without clinging, when we allow the unending to arrive without resistance. Those instances are reminders that the flow of life is not our enemy, even if it often feels like one. Each failed attempt, each struggle to plan, each moment of impatience is a part of shared human experience. We are not alone in this negotiation with time. We are learning to witness, to observe, to record, to reflect. We are learning to see impermanence not as loss but as a teacher. We are learning to let go, to allow endings to become beginnings, to accept the subtle, persistent rhythm that carries us forward. And in this shared journey, we find something silently comforting. Time's passage, though relentless, invites us to move with it, not against it, and to discover the resilience already woven into the fabric of our lives. You notice the hesitation before you speak, the pause that stretches a little too long. You notice the small procrastination, the task left undone, the emails unread, the ideas scribbled in notebooks that gather dust. You wonder why you delay, why the simplest choices sometimes feel heavy, why the minutes slip while you argue silently with yourself. There's a certain tension inside you, a tug between wanting control and realizing that control is always partial, always fleeting. You can feel the weight of it. The desire to hold everything steady while life insists on moving. You have tried to measure it, to schedule it, to shape it in your liking, yet time has a rhythm all its own. Clocks tick, shadows lengthen. The day bends into light and into night, and you realize that some things will always unfold outside your grasp. And in that realization, there's a mixture of frustration and subtle clarity. Time gives meaning to our action and choices, not by granting certainty, but by revealing the consequences. That the small imprint, the brush stroke of effort and attention. You see it in the silent moment, too. The way sunlight hits a wall, the sound of your own breath, the faint hum of the city beyond your window. Those are reminders of that life is happening now, in the present, not in the undone task or the rehearsed conversation. The present moment is the doorway to all possibilities. Yet we often stand outside, hesitating, looking back at what could have been or forward to what might come. You realize that your mind clings to outcomes, to imagined futures. The present, the raw, unfiltered now, waits silently for acknowledgement. You notice patterns in yourself, the ways you attach to results, the ways your emotional loop endlessly around imagined failures or distant hopes. You see how you chase certainty and how chasing it leaves you restless, hollow, slightly disconnected from your own days. And yet, the more you observe, the more you notice subtle openings. There's space between thoughts and action, between expectation and reality. Time's rhythms the pace of growth and healing. Not because it changes instantly, but because constancy allows small shift, accumulation of awareness, repeated acts of presence that slowly rearrange the inner landscape. You feel the pull to compare, to measure, to judge, but you notice it without engaging. You see the way you tighten your shoulders, the way your chest constricts when a plan fails or moment feels wasted. You see it, and in saying, you step back just a little from the intensity of your own mind. You see the brushstroke of your life, the desires and decisions, the hesitation, the minor victories, the small failures, and recognize them as part of the whole that only you experience. You are both painter and observer, and the canvas stretches before you is in endless subtle shifts. You recall moments when clarity emerges silently, not like a revelation, but as a soft recognition that the small kindness you offered mattered, that a pause to breathe was not wasted, that some endings brought beginnings you couldn't yet see. You remember noticing a conversation that felt ordinary at time, only to realize later that it contained a lesson about patience or boundaries. You realize that meanings isn't always obvious in the moment. It accrues in layers, visible only to the patient observer of one's own life. You notice how often you overlook the present in the pursuit of imagined future. You notice the pull to perfect, to control, to plan for outcomes that are never guaranteed. And yet, beneath that pull, you feel a steady current. Small attentions, silent moments, deliberate awareness that slowly shape the texture of your days. You realize that the tension between desire and reality, between control and acceptance, is not a weakness but a marker of engagement with life. It is the way the human mind negotiates its place in time. You see yourself more clearly now, in your habitual patterns and in silent conversation with yourself. In that ways, your attention drifts and returns. You notice your hesitation, your attachment, your fears, and in noticing, a strange calm settles, a recognition that those patterns are neither permanent nor defining. They are brushstroke, threads in the fabric, marks left by someone learning to move with time rather than against it. And so you stay here, silently, attentive, observing the rhythm of your thoughts, the movement of minutes, the rise and fall of your own breath. You notice, you witness, you recognize. Not to fix, not to judge, but to understand. And in that understanding, you glimpse the subtle power of presence. That by inhibiting this moment fully, by noticing without resistance, you participate in life more deeply than you often realize. We notice sometimes too late how fleeting everything is, yet we keep trying. We make lists, set intention, plan mornings, afternoons, evenings, and still the hours move through our fingers like fine dust. We watch loved ones change, relationships shift, the city around us evolved, and we realize that what felt permanent yesterday is already softened by time. Life is a fleeting shadow moving with time, and even when we grasp it, even when we strain to hold on, the contours slip away. We remember moments of misjudgment, priorities, when the small anxieties occupied more space than moments themselves. We recall how we invested energy in things that seemed urgent, only to notice later that they were trivial. in the broader wave of lives. We have tumbled, faltered, and failed. But in those moments, time reveals the subtle truth. The things that mattered, the choices that shaped us, the gestures that left lasting impression. We see now that growth is rarely immediate. It emerges silently, woven through errors, misunderstanding, and unexpected turns. We notice impermanence everywhere. The morning sunlight falls different on the same wall each day. Conversation change tone without warning. We ourselves shift in ways both noticeable and invisible, and yet within this constant flux, there is a strange stillness, a pattern to the movement, a rhythm that unfolds in the way if we pay attention. Time is backdrop against which life unfolds, indifferent to wishes, yet offering reality to those willing to look. We feel the tension between the pain of loss and the silent beauty of what remains. A friendship fades, a habit disappears, a plan collapses, and simultaneously, the same page of time allows new opportunities to arise, new connections to form, small joys to appear. This duality, loss and emergence, shadow and light, is woven onto our days. We notice the deliberate interplay, grief and relief, regret and insight, ending and beginnings. Each moment is layered, each experience carries deep depth, each choice leaves traces we may only perceive later. We have learned to observe rather than control. We notice how often we resist the flow, how often we cling to expectations, and yet how life continues, regardless of our attempts. Living in harmony with the time brings peace. Not the loud, dramatic peace promised in stories, but the silent, steady acceptance that allows us to move through life without constant struggle. We see that tension and softness coexist. The shadow of difficulty can illuminate the contours of understanding. The pressure of challenges can reveal hidden resilience. The weight of impermanence can highlight the beauty of present. We reflect on our collective experience, the way moments are shared, the ways failures are repeated across different lives, the universality of human attempts to hold. We see then that none of us are alone in the feeling of rushing, missing, hesitating, losing. Time teaches us all and touches us, and yet in its rhythm, it invites us to notice, to reflect, to recognize the short nature of one concern. The clarity comes not from forcing outcomes, but from observing what unfolds, from testing the patterns that reveal themselves only to the patient eye. We notice finally that the passage of time is neither enemy nor ally. It is a medium. Through it, we stumble, rise, falter, pause and grow. Shadows lengthen, hours accumulate, and patterns appear in painters of traces. And in the observation, we find a silent reassurance. Even if the moments feel fleeting, even if life slips through unnoticed, the rhythm of existence carries meaning. There is an art in living attentively, a subtle power in seeing impermanence as both a teacher and a companion, a gentle clarity in acknowledging that the transit nature of life is what makes its texture remarkable. You notice the hours differently now. The way they stretch and contract depending on your attention. The mornings feel longer when you linger with a cup of tea, watching sunlight spill across the floor, and the evening arrive with softness you almost hadn't registered before. You notice the choices differently too. The small ones, the trivial ones, the ones that ripple silently through your day. You see the brushstroke of your actions, the subtle shaping of your own hour, and you wonder what patterns are forming beneath the surface in the parts of life you often overlook. You might try something small. Perhaps you open a notebook and write a line. A fleeting thought, a worry captured before it dissolves. Perhaps you pause to watch the light bend across the walls, or the shadow of a branch moving gently with the wind. Perhaps you breathe deliberately, taming yourself not to the clock, but to your own lazy and falling chest. Those are not solution, not instruction. They are experiment in noticing, experiment in inhibiting the present, experiment in observing the passage of time as it flows rather than fighting against it. You might observe the tension within yourself, the pull between desire and reality, between what you hope for and what actually unfolds. You notice how often your mind clings to certainty, to imagined outcomes, and you see how time resists those attempts. And yet, in that resistance, there's an invitation. You realize that endings are not overview, but beginnings you cannot yet see. You notice that each day, each moment contains opening for understanding, for silent joy, for small acts that ripple further than you anticipate. You begin to trace the rhythm of your hours, the pass of minutes, the subtle interweaving of effort and chance. You might experiment with letting the day unfold in paths that are unplanned, with moments that surprises you, with pauses that feel awkward at first. You notice that when you relinquish control, when you allow impermanence to be present rather than there's a curious clarity. Time is the canvas, and your actions are the brushstroke. Patterns emerge, connections appear, small victories reveal themselves silently. You may feel hesitation, the familiar tug of self-doubt, the whisper of impatience, the pull of expectation. You notice it, name it internally, and let it exist without judgment. Reflection is not a prescription. Attention is not a command. You are not required to be perfect, to capture every moment, to master the passage of time. You are only invited to notice, to inhibit, to see. The choice belongs to you alone. You might find that journaling becomes a dialogue rather than a task, a conversation with yourself in which the shadows of the past and the flickers of the future alters gently, with curiosity and care. You might notice the rhythm of your days becoming more visible, the subtle patterns of attention, hesitation, and care revealing the trajectory of your inner life. After weeks or months, you might see that those small acts accumulate in ways you could not anticipate, shaping your perception of your own days, the flow of time, and the meaning of you uncover in ordinary moments. You may begin to embrace impermanence not as a loss, but as a companion, allowing endings to arrive without resistance and beginnings to unfold without expectation. You notice that hope is not a demand for outcomes, not a push against the current, but a willingness to engage with time's flow, to meet each day with awareness, to allow the subtle movement of your life to carry lessons, textures, and beauty that could not be perceived otherwise. The clock never stops, but neither should hope. And so you pause silently, observing the hours that stretch ahead. You notice your own presence within them, the subtle shaping of choice, the silent artistry of attention. You notice the rhythm of your breathing, the movement of shadows, the passage of light. You recognize that the field not a place you arrive at, but something you cultivate moment by moment through awareness, reflection, and small act of noticing that only you can perform. You feel a silent resolve settle in, not as pressure, not as instruction, but as internal acknowledgement. The time that flows through you is yours to notice, to inhibit, and to shape gently. Endings are beginnings, each moment is a thread, and your attention, presence, and silent observation are the ways you participate in the unfolding tapestry of your own life. In that understanding, a soft clarity emerges. The passage of time is not something to conquer, but a companion to be observed, explored, and gently met with awareness and curiosity. We notice together how much of life is spent in silent observation, moments of hesitation, small victories, trivial failures, fleeting joys. We see the same patterns across our days. The way time moves around us, indifferent to our plans, yet shaping us silently in its passage. We notice how often we rush, how often we pause, how often we wonder if we are using the hours well, only to realize later that simply inhibiting them is already a form of participation. We see the shared human experience in this. None of us are immune to the pull of distractions, the weight of expectation, or the subtle ache of impermanence. We all stumble, all hesitate, all misjudge the significance of the present, and yet, even in those stumbles, the flow continues. Shadows lengthen, light shift, and the world moves. Not judging, not pausing, simply continuing. We notice silently that being present, noticing the passage of time, reflecting on our own patterns is something we do together, whether aloud or in the private chambers of our minds. We recognize the small acts that matter, observing the light across the wall, tracing the rhythm of our own breath, pausing before speaking, recording a fleeting thought in a notebook. Those are not remarkable in the conventional sense, but they are the threads through which life's texture reveals itself. They are subtle, repeated gestures of awareness, act of silent participation in the unfolding of our days. And in this shared noticing, we find a soft reassurance. The impermanence that something sometimes feels heavy in is also the medium through which insight, clarity, and subtle beauty emerges. You notice it too. You notice your own hesitation, your attachment, the tug of desire and expectation. You notice the small openings, the moments where reflection surfaces, the minutes that feels uneasily alive. You notice that endings arrive, beginnings fall, and life continues. Sometimes unnoticed, sometimes surprising, sometimes silently transformative. You notice that simply observing, simply acknowledging the rhythm of your own experience carries a depth that words cannot fully capture. You recognize that the choice to notice, to reflect, to inhabit the present is yours alone. You notice that the patterns of time are already forming around you, whether you intervene or not, and in that recognition, a gentle clarity settles. The hours pass, the world moves, The shadows lengthen, and you are part of it. The moment's alive, live, alive again, and in your attention, silent, deliberate, curious. You participate in subtle art of your own life. We notice, finally, that the act of observing is itself meaningful. Time continues, life continues, and you are here, moving through it, shaping it, noticing it in ways only you can.